I'm sure there's some questions, clarifications, new ideas for that.
We're just wondering whether we can show the audience how it works behind the curtain already to get an idea what the output will be for the
user at the end.
Users, yes.
Yeah, so maybe we include an advertisement blog for that, how it will look like, and then collect the questions for both parts. Yeah, that's a good idea.
So shall we try?
These are the, by the way, these are the old results. So you see a lot of error. That is the 51% precision and what was that, 46% F1 score. So you see a lot of mistakes.
But yes, it looks, the annotated text looks like that. Some things are correct, others not. Then
You see this part is the named entity linking or the geoparsing of the locations, right? It's an interesting story in itself. But obviously, the one important point is that if you get garbage in, meaning that the locations are wrongly recognized in the first place, so that, I don't know, Magentius is recognized as a location, then you get even more garbage out than you would not normally expect if you had 100% correct. So the first step is really to bump this precision of the identification of locations. Sure.
You spoke about the crucial final step in order to combine those findings with authority files or with identities. How could you manage this? Do you have ideas? Is this mostly an intellectual work, or could this be done automatically too?
Yes. It's named entity recognition is more, well, if you ask a computational linguist, perhaps he would even tell you that it's a boring thing and it's a completely resolved task and no problem about that. No real scientific challenge. Whereas named entity linking is a field where a lot of work remains to do. Well, one thing that you do is basically, perhaps the problem is not so different from the optimization of a search engine. When you go to Google and you write Parthenon, you expect the results to be ranked and the name Parthenon being, I mean, the most important Parthenon coming first, so most likely you are interested in a monument in Athens and not the Parthenon in Nashville, or not the Greek restaurant Parthenon around the corner. So the typical way is just implement functions that would use the search functionalities, like in our gazetteer, rank the results in a meaningful way, taking the context into consideration. So once again, if you go to Google and write Parthenon Nashville, then the fact that you were also interested in Nashville is a strong contextual argument that will tell you, well, not the Parthenon in Athens. Something like that is also possible for these entities. But then the question becomes, what are the features? Persons and locations are different animals, meaning that for locations, those contexts might be linguistic, again. So there might be linguistic hints, the contextual words that will tell you what location you are interested in, or geographic, meaning that by looking at a window of previously identified locations, if you take the coordinates and you calculate how distant from those, like for example for the last identified location, the one that you're getting candidates about. So let me give an example. I have the string Pisa, which is recognized as a location. And you see from a lookup in the gazetteer that Pisa might be the Italian city with the Leaning Tower that we all know, or the place in Elis in Greece. Well, if the previous location was Olympia, then by simply calculating that the distance between Olympia and Elis and Pisa in Elis is shorter than the distance between Olympia and Pisa in Italy, you get a strong hint that perhaps the Pisa in Elis should be ranked higher than the other one. This type of operation. Persons are more problematic, and I wouldn't know exactly how to tackle this problem, but there are different solutions in the literature that we can test. Yeah.
But maybe it would be possible to connect the persons to places too. So, as an example,
yes.
You know, somehow you live in a certain town or
yes.
city. You can, if this city
yes.
is in the text before, you can maybe connect
yes.
whichever person there or an organization.
Absolutely. One other option that I read recently is by using network analysis, and that would work also for persons. And so if you constructed a complete network of all your entities, with links, and you weight the links between person, place, and those entities in terms of distances of how many words or characters within a text that they occur together. Maybe you see that some persons tend to co-occur with places, like, for example, archaeologists that were particularly famous for studying or for working in particular places would tend to be associated with the same place. And I totally agree that this is a very promising way of going to solve the problem. Marcos.
Thank you very much. I have, well, let's say, only one question, but it is a three-folded question. First of all, the basis of your analysis. I assume that you made some OCR on the text.
No, we worked with texts that are already digitized.
Oh,
so,
so you have an accuracy of 100% of the texts.
Not really, because as you saw, that is not the case, especially for the Greek characters or the characters in other scripts. But we decided not to, since we're talking about texts that are already digitized, not to include OCR, because it would be a lot of supplementary work. But I agree that it might be a possibility. That it might improve.
And you had one slide where you showed where you get the geo names, for example, for modern places, and the iDAI gazetteer for ancient places. The same goes for the persons, but I couldn't see what you used for ancient persons. And here in the list I see, okay, your list of places has identified many places in the geo names.
Yes.
But the other ones like Flavian or Vetranio doesn't have any combination. So I was thinking about why not using first the iDAI gazetteer, because your main focus is on the ancient world, and then only use geonames when you don't get any name or any code in the iDAI.
That goes into the rubric of the problems of the live demonstration. This is working with a slightly outdated version of the database where geonames was the only database supported. Now we support the iDAI gazetteer, and we will do exactly as you said. So we will. But this is also an interesting question, because, by the way, it reminds me, some geoparsers that we tested operates in or perform the type of operations that I mentioned before by also rewarding some types of locations. So taking the type of location into consideration in the ranking system and rewarding some types over others. So the Edinburgh geoparser, by the way, that we used, always consistently rank inhabited places over archaeological places. That's a choice of the geoparser. That does not work very well in this context, right? So that's another area where we should work. So our geoparser will do exactly the opposite, as you said. So we will reward modern places over ancient places, even if, for example, in a gazetteer we had both. So the same name can be linked to either the archaeological site of something or the modern site with the same name.
I have another question. I mean, as you see here already, can you differentiate between the actual text of an article and the footnotes and the bibliography? Because there are different text styles, and which also would lead to different results, maybe also both in linguistic terms, but also in the terms of for the user. So if you could find a possibility to say, just show me the entities of the main text, because that's interested in me and not the publication places of the bibliography. Is there a possibility to automatically detect these different text?
We don't do that at this moment, but there is research about this type of classification. There are even systems that implement conversion to formats like TEI and extraction of bibliographic references, which it's certainly a feature that would be interesting also because maybe people will not be interested in knowing that Cambridge, Massachusetts is quoted n times in an article, and will be much more interested in knowing the Autun and the other Gallian cities of this article that talks about Gallia, Roman Gallia. At this moment, we are still working with the text as it comes out of without doing this type of pre-processing.
Yes, Marcus.
I would like to add one thing to your question, because it came to me as well in my mind. Why not differentiate the bibliography and the text? But to go even a step farther, I would say, why the hell don't we have any system that can extract from bibliographies the real item? I mean, the librarians, they always tell me, well, we have so structured data, and as well the publishers, they tell me, okay, I have my rules of annotating the publication. So there are rules, but why can't we get from a bibliographical annotation right directly to the bibliography and to the item? Why isn't it possible still?
There is research, though, on automatic extraction of bibliography, but it's true that it's automatic identification of bibliographical references. It's true that it's surprisingly, it's a field that's surprisingly not so prominent or so widespread in terms of...
There are, this is the daily work. If I'm working on a bibliography, what do I have to do? I have to scan all these texts, and if I would have a possibility to scan them automatically, I know that there is in Zotero a possibility to make an RTF scan, but how does it work? We know how it works, but it should be so easy, but, so easy, but why?
Yeah, it's true. At the same time, this journal, for example, is peculiar because this does not implement a form of your typical name here reference, like what you say as Mambrini 2000 whatever, and then the reference in the bibliography you get the full reference. But it has a sort of a mixed footnote reference where everything is here, and the abbreviations are of the most frequently used things are given here, and then everything is quoted in the footnotes. That again makes it a little more difficult for us because, as you said, okay, we could say we are not interested in the footnotes. At the same time, maybe in footnotes people describe stuff, they discuss problems that are relevant to the argumentation. So we cannot always say, okay, we leave the footnotes out. We would like to leave or perhaps we would like to treat the bibliographical references differently.
But maybe not to leave them out, but to treat them differently. To have them maybe that also has an effect on the precision and the recall.
Yes.
Because it might be easier for the normal text, because that's a normal syntax for the system to identify, while the footnotes are a lot of abbreviations and so on. So there might be different, and also to have both options, saying show me all hints and just show me the hints of either the text or the footnotes, but not omitting it.
Yes.
Totally. Are there any other?
Regarding the vocabulary, perhaps you could say something about our projects of vocab, iDAI vocab, and of the ours vocabulary, because we have a rich vocabulary in iDAI, which should we use later for perhaps in 2 words.
We have 2 slightly parallel projects going on at the DAI at this moment. One is the iDAI vocab. That's already browsable. If you Google it, you find you find the page right away, which is a controlled vocabulary. So a list of the terminology, in-domain terminology of archaeology, organized in broad category that perhaps the mirror one famous resource, which is the Getty Art and Archaeology and Architecture Thesaurus. It supports translation into something like 12 or 13 languages. I forgot the 13 languages. Not all of them are equally represented, so it's about 8,000 concepts in German, covering hopefully a lot of different areas in archaeology, but mostly strongly with a strong penchant on architecture, especially Greco-Roman architecture. And supporting translation of not all of them. Some of the languages are just there for show and get just a few concepts. But in languages as different as Spanish, Portuguese, Turkish, Russian, Ukrainian, and Arabic, which has a very good coverage. This is a very proud of, because we had native speakers translating most of it, while the rest of the translations are mostly acquired from other sources. About the thesaurus is a refactoring somehow, so to speak, of the Xenon thesaurus, the thesaurus that was used for classification of publication in the Xenon catalog, and it's monolingual at this moment, but with the linking of together with the iDAI vocab, it will support also the translation into as many languages as we have. And it's more of a structuring of the different concepts, so it's more of an ontology, so a way of mapping the concepts in archaeology and the relations between those concepts. So this is in short. So again, in a context like this one, we could have, for example, a scan of the terminology used in this, or the names or verbs used in a publication like this one, and the most relevant. There are ways, I will not talk about them because I've already extended my talk so much, of recognizing the most distinguished lexicon items of a text like this one, the most peculiar, the most important, and we could try to find a way to match them as we match location to gazetteer to a lexical resource like this one, like the one that I just mentioned, so that if you think about it, you can have also summary of an article in a language that this article was never translated into. So you can match a term to its Arabic equivalent, and this way you can have a sense of what this article is talking about in Arabic, even if you don't read English or German or the other way around. Our article in Arabic have summaries in German, English, French, Italian, or whatever. So this is the long-term goal.
Thanks a lot for coming, for your talk, for joining us. Join us for the drinks and the nibbles for further talk and questions and